today we'll be speaking about the Standard, a ship that was built on Beaubears Island in 1847 and undertook 3 separate journeys to Australia in the 1850s. So, as always, we'll begin by saying that I'm not an expert and that what I'm offering here today is really more for narrative purposes. And my sources today come almost exclusively from the British Newspaper Archive. So the Standard was built in 1847 at the Joseph Russell shipyard on Beaubears Island. It weighed about 714 tons. We don't have any exact dimensions for the ship, but it was probably fairly large just based on the number of passengers that it took. We'll be talking about in a minute. So by this point, the Russell shipyard had some of its greatest successes and was now coming into its final years. The next year, of course, in 1848, Russell would be visited by Wilford Woodruff, prompting the eventual sale of Beaubears Island a couple of years later. So the Standard was sold in London in about 1850, and in 1852 it started what would be a series of trips to Adelaide, Australia. So at this time, migration to Australia was something that was becoming somewhat more frequent, and the Standard took part in this. So in 1852 it took 289 migrants on a 101-day journey from London to Adelaide. Now, I believe 8 people passed away on the trip. 2 people were born on the trip. So again, it's quite a lengthy voyage. Now, we don't know exactly what happened on this particular voyage, but we do have articles in the newspapers at around that time that speak about similar voyages and the events that happened on them. So we know that leaving London in March, it's probably fairly cold and rainy, but as the ship travels along the African coast, it's so hot that many people are bathing 2 and 3 times a day just in an effort to keep cool. Sailors are shaving in their beards in order to to stay cool. Well, as a matter of fact, some of them aren't even using razors. They're just using jagged pieces of iron to scrape the hair from their faces. They're so hot. Of course, as they're traveling underneath the Cape of Good Hope, as they're coming closer to the South Pole, it's so cold that it's snowing on deck and snowball fights ensue. So you can imagine what wild variances in climate there are on a trip of that sort. But again, these passengers arrive in Adelaide. The Standard returns to Great Britain, and in 1853 it does it all over again, this time with 321 passengers. This time, 9 babies are born, and there are only 4 deaths. In 1854, another voyage takes place. This one is only 90 days. This is the shortest of all 3 voyages, but unfortunately there are 14 deaths and 7 births on board the ship. Now, most of those who died on all 3 trips were young children, some of whom had just been born. Others of the deaths included older folks who contracted various illnesses. The ship's doctor lists convulsions and other such illnesses, emaciation, things of that nature that overtook some of the older passengers. On all 3 trips, Captain John Blythe was commended by the passengers for his professionalism and his courtesy in taking people on this long trip. In 2 of the 3 voyages, the first and the third, the ship's doctor was also commended. However, on the second voyage, one of the matrons on board the ship was in fact demoted for inefficiency. In 1855, the Standard was used to transport troops, the King's Own Borderers. There's the 25th Regiment, I believe, of the King's Own Borderers, from India back to Great Britain. They Again, we don't know how long this trip was, but they were well received when they returned home to port. We don't really know what happened to the Standard after that, but again, it was an interesting idea, an interesting story of one of the ships that was built on Beaubears Island, traveling again all the way to Australia on 3 separate occasions, and again to India in subsequent years. So with that, we'll close today. We hope to see you back again next week for more stories. Thanks so much.